Before anything else, before the noise of the world enters your mind, before your phone lights up, before your worries try to claim space in your heart, begin your day with two simple yet supernatural words: thank you, God. Because gratitude is not just good manners, it is a spiritual strategy. It is the doorway to favor, the invitation to peace, and the atmosphere where blessings begin to manifest. When you say thank you, God, you are not just expressing appreciation, you are positioning your life to receive what heaven already prepared. Every morning when you wake up, you have a choice: open your eyes with anxiety or open your mouth with gratitude. One leads to stress, the other opens the door to supernatural strength. Thanksgiving is the language that quiets every storm before it even forms. It stabilizes your spirit before the world has a chance to shake you. It reminds you that God has already gone ahead of you, already prepared your steps, already lined up the right people, the right opportunities, the right solutions. Your gratitude acknowledges His greatness, and His greatness responds to your gratitude. When you start your day by saying thank you, God, you align your spirit with heaven's agenda. You shift out of fear and into faith. You move from your own limited plan into God's unlimited plan. You stop trying to carry the day by your own strength and instead step into the day with divine backing. Gratitude is not passive, it is powerful. It is you declaring, Lord, you are bigger than anything I will face today. You are wiser than any decision I must make. You are stronger than anything trying to oppose me. Some doors don't open because you push harder. Some doors open because you praise sooner. There are blessings tied not to effort, but to gratitude. A grateful heart attracts divine favor. A thankful spirit carries a fragrance heaven recognizes. When you say, thank you, God, you are unlocking what your worry would have kept closed. You are inviting breakthroughs you could never produce through your strength alone. And hear this clearly. Gratitude breaks the power of yesterday. No matter what happened last night, last week, or last month, when you wake up and say, thank you, God, you are choosing freedom over frustration. You are declaring, today is blessed. Today is new. Today I walk in peace. Thanksgiving wipes away the residue of old burdens and fills your heart with new strength. It shifts you from dwelling on the past to moving into your purpose. Starting your morning with gratitude establishes an atmosphere of blessing for the entire day. Where there is thanksgiving, there is clarity. Where there is praise, there is wisdom. Where there is a grateful heart, there is divine guidance. When you say thank you, God, you're not just speaking to the moment, you are shaping your day, your decisions, your attitude, your energy, and your outcomes. So today, before anything else, pause and thank Him. Thank Him for breath. Thank Him for strength. Thank Him for protection. Thank Him for what He brought you through. Thank Him for what He's bringing you into. Thank Him for the peace that surrounds you, the favor that follows you, and the blessings that are already on their way to you. When gratitude leads your morning, favor fills your day. When thanksgiving opens your mouth, God opens your path. When you say thank you, God, heaven moves on your behalf before you take your first step. Gratitude positions you for God's favor because it shifts your entire posture toward heaven. When you wake up and choose to say thank you, God, even before your circumstances change, you are demonstrating faith. And faith is the environment where favor flows. Gratitude is not just a reaction to blessings. It's a declaration that you expect God to move, even when you can't see how. It's you telling heaven, I trust you more than I trust what I feel. I trust your promises more than I trust my problems. When you are grateful, you stop focusing on what is missing and start acknowledging what is already present. And God responds to that. A grateful heart says, Lord, I see your hand. I see your mercy. I see your protection. I see your provision. When you recognize what God has already done, He releases more. Favor increases where appreciation increases. Blessings multiply where thanksgiving is practiced. Gratitude turns your heart into good soil where every divine seed can grow. Favor doesn't chase the ungrateful. It chases those who know how to honor the giver. God pours out blessings not just because we ask, but because we acknowledge. Gratitude magnifies God in your eyes. And when God becomes bigger in your perspective, his favor becomes bigger in your life. Suddenly doors open that should have stayed shut. Opportunities find you that you didn't qualify for. People bless you without knowing why. Things fall into place that you couldn't have orchestrated. Not because you worked harder, but because you were thankful sooner. Gratitude is a magnet for the supernatural. It attracts divine alignment, divine acceleration, and divine assistance. It tells God, I may not have everything I want yet, but I'm grateful for everything you've already given me. And God says, if you can thank me for the little, I can trust you with the greater. That's why gratitude positions you for favor. It prepares your heart, adjusts your attitude, and creates space for God to release blessings you're ready to steward. When your day begins with gratitude, your path becomes lined with favor. Not because life gets easier, but because your spirit becomes aligned with the God who goes before you. And where God goes, favor follows. Thanking God aligns your spirit with heaven's agenda, because gratitude pulls you out of your own limited perspective and places you into divine alignment. When you say, thank you, God, you are not just speaking words, you are shifting spiritual frequency. You are tuning your heart to the voice of God instead of the noise of the world. Suddenly, you're not operating by pressure, by fear, or by yesterday's emotions. You're operating from a posture of surrender, trust, and expectation. Gratitude clears the spiritual clutter so you can hear heaven more clearly. When you thank God first, you step into the day with a heart that is ready to listen instead of react. You stop rushing and start receiving. You stop trying to force outcomes and begin walking in guidance. Heaven's agenda is always perfect, always intentional, always ordered, but you can only walk in it when your spirit is calm enough to sense God's direction. Gratitude is the key that unlocks that calm. It stills your heart so God can steer your life. When you begin your morning in thanksgiving, you're telling God, lead me. I trust your plan more than my own. That simple act of humility opens the door for divine wisdom to flow. The decisions you make become sharper. The opportunities you notice become clearer. The people you need show up at the right time. When your spirit is aligned, you stop fighting against what God is doing and start flowing with it. You find yourself in the right rooms, at the right moments, having the right conversations, not by coincidence, but by divine orchestration. Gratitude also guards your spirit from the distractions that try to pull you off course. When you've said, thank you, God, you've already established who is in control. Stress loses its power, fear loses its grip, anxiety loses its voice. You are centered, anchored, and spiritually tuned in. An attuned spirit can recognize God's hand moving, even in places where others see nothing happening. Heaven's agenda is always moving. You just position yourself to walk in it when your heart is grateful. That's why thanking God first thing in the morning is so powerful. It places you in alignment with his will, his timing, and his purpose. You start living your day not by random events, but by divine appointments. Gratitude sets your spirit on God's wavelength, so you no longer operate by chance. You operate by calling. Thanking God aligns your spirit with heaven's agenda, because gratitude instantly shifts your focus from what is happening around you to what God is doing within you. When you wake up and say, thank you, God, you are stepping out of your own plans and stepping into his. You are reminding yourself that your life is not driven by random events, but by divine purpose. Gratitude repositions your heart so you can recognize the direction God is already pointing you toward. When you start your day with thanksgiving, you silence the noise that tries to distort your clarity. The world pulls you in 1,000 directions, but gratitude pulls you back to center. It brings your mind into agreement with God's truth instead of your emotions. It brings your heart into agreement with God's timing instead of your impatience. It brings your spirit into agreement with God's wisdom instead of your assumptions. Suddenly, you're not operating from stress. You're operating from surrender. You're not reacting, you're receiving. A grateful heart becomes sensitive to God's leading. Gratitude opens your spiritual ears. It sharpens your discernment. It softens your spirit so you can sense when God is saying, go, wait, or shift. When your spirit is aligned, you stop trying to force doors open and start walking through the ones God prepared. You stop asking God to bless your agenda and start participating in His. And the beautiful thing is this: when you align with heaven's agenda, everything else begins to align around you. Peace flows where confusion once sat. Clarity shows up where frustration used to dominate. Solutions appear that your effort could never produce. You start noticing divine nudges, people you're meant to bless, opportunities you're meant to seize, conversations you're meant to have. Your steps become intentional because they are guided, not guessed. Gratitude also protects you from the spiritual attacks that try to mislead you. A thankful heart is a guarded heart. Anxiety cannot enter where praise already lives. Fear cannot rule where gratitude reigns. Doubt cannot take root where thanksgiving has already taken authority. When you say thank you, God, you are telling heaven, lead me, and telling the enemy, you don't. This is why thanking God is not just a habit, it's alignment, it's calibration, it's realignment with divine purpose. When gratitude leads your morning, heaven's agenda leads your steps. You begin walking in rhythm with God instead of wrestling against life. And when your spirit is aligned with heaven, your day doesn't just go better, your whole life begins to flow in divine order. Gratitude opens doors you cannot open by effort alone, because thanksgiving activates a dimension of favor that human strength can never produce. There are opportunities your talent cannot reach, connections your education cannot secure, and breakthroughs your hard work cannot force, yet gratitude can unlock them with a single, sincere thank you, God. When you operate with a grateful heart, you step into a realm where God begins to move in ways that go far beyond your natural ability. Effort is powerful, but it has limits. Gratitude, however, reaches into the supernatural. When you thank God even before the blessing arrives, you are showing heaven that you trust His timing, His process, and His plan. And God responds to that posture. A thankful spirit attracts favor because gratitude honors the giver more than the gift. When you appreciate what He has already done, He releases what He has stored for you next. There are doors that won't respond to pushing, pulling, or striving, but they swing open the moment gratitude fills your heart. Why? Because gratitude shifts you out of self-reliance and into God-reliance. It tells God, I know this next level isn't about my strength, it's about your grace. And grace opens doors that hustle never could. Grace puts you in rooms where your name has been spoken even before you arrive. Grace brings opportunities you didn't apply for. Grace initiates miracles that no amount of human effort could manufacture. Gratitude also changes the atmosphere around you. People are drawn to a thankful spirit. Doors open because your attitude carries humility. Favor flows because others want to be connected to someone who carries light, not heaviness. A grateful heart creates relational bridges that impatience or entitlement would have burned. Sometimes God uses people to open doors, and gratitude makes you someone people want to bless. But the deepest truth is this: gratitude unlocks God's intervention. When you say thank you, God, you're inviting His hand into your situation. You're giving Him access to turn obstacles into opportunities, delays into setups, and impossibilities into testimonies. Gratitude shifts the environment from human limitation to divine involvement. And when God gets involved, doors open that no man can shut. There are blessings waiting for you that won't respond to pressure, but they will respond to praise. Gratitude is the key that fits the lock you've been struggling with for years. And when you use that key, you stop striving, you start receiving, and you walk through doors that only God could have opened. A thankful heart breaks the power of yesterday's burdens because gratitude disconnects you from the weight of what was and connects you to the hope of what is possible. When you wake up and choose to say thank you, God, you are refusing to let yesterday's mistakes, disappointments, and frustrations dictate today's mindset. Gratitude lifts you out of the residue of the past and places you in the refreshment of a new beginning. It reminds you that even if yesterday was heavy, God has given you fresh breath, fresh mercy, and fresh strength for today. Yesterday may have left you tired. It may have left you discouraged. It may have left you questioning things you once believed. But the moment gratitude comes out of your mouth, chains begin to break off your spirit. You cannot hold on to bitterness while speaking thanksgiving. You cannot cling to fear while acknowledging God's goodness. You cannot stay stuck in regret while praising the God who redeems. Gratitude interrupts the cycle of emotional carryover that tries to follow you from one day to the next. Thanksgiving resets your heart. It clears the emotional fog. It interrupts negative momentum. It shifts your internal narrative from look what happened to me to look what God is doing in me. A thankful heart doesn't deny the pain. It just refuses to let the pain be the final voice. When you say thank you, God, you are declaring that your past is not your prison. Your gratitude becomes a spiritual reset button that releases you from old heaviness and recenters your focus on God's faithfulness. Gratitude also dismantles the lies the enemy tries to whisper. Yesterday's burdens say, you're stuck. Gratitude says, God is still moving. Yesterday's burdens say, nothing will change. Gratitude says, everything is possible with God. Yesterday's burdens say, you failed. Gratitude says, God is still working all things together for your good. Thanksgiving speaks a greater truth than yesterday's pain. And here's the miracle. When your heart becomes thankful, the burdens lose their authority. The emotional weight of yesterday cannot survive in an atmosphere of praise. The mental replay of old wounds cannot dominate a mind focused on God's goodness. Gratitude breaks cycles, breaks heaviness, breaks discouragement, breaks regret, and breaks spiritual stagnation. It frees you to show up as the renewed version of yourself instead of the wounded version of yesterday. That's why a thankful heart is powerful. It gives God room to heal what hurt you, restore what drained you, and strengthen what weakened you. Gratitude shifts you from carrying burdens to receiving blessings. It moves you from being trapped in yesterday to walking boldly into the promise of today. Thanksgiving sets the atmosphere for blessings, wisdom, and divine guidance because gratitude transforms the environment around you and within you. When you begin your morning by saying, thank you, God, you are not just speaking words, you are creating spiritual conditions where God's presence can move freely. A grateful heart becomes a place where blessings feel welcome, where wisdom flows naturally, and where divine guidance becomes clear and steady. Gratitude shifts the air. It changes the mood. It lifts the spiritual climate so God can pour out what He's already prepared for you. When you take a moment to thank God, you calm your spirit and clear your mind. Suddenly, you're not rushing into the day confused. You're stepping into it centered and guided. Thanksgiving slows the noise long enough for you to hear God's whispers. It opens your spiritual ears so you can detect His direction. Many people ask for guidance but cannot hear it because their mind is crowded. Gratitude clears the clutter so clarity can enter. And where clarity enters, wisdom follows. Gratitude brings you into alignment with God's thoughts, and God's thoughts produce wise decisions. A thankful heart is not clouded by fear, frustration, or negativity, which means you can see your next step with sharper vision. When you thank God, your mind becomes peaceful, and a peaceful mind is a wise mind. Decisions become easier, choices become clearer. The right paths become more visible because your spirit is no longer distracted by worry. Thanksgiving also creates an atmosphere that attracts blessing, not because God needs gratitude to give, but because gratitude prepares you to receive. When your heart is thankful, you're positioned to recognize opportunities, honor divine timing, and appreciate what God sends your way. Blessings often show up in simple forms, and only a grateful heart notices them. When your spirit is thankful, you stop overlooking the small things, and the small things are often the doorway to the big breakthroughs. There's another dimension to this. Thanksgiving builds faith, and where faith rises, blessings multiply. Gratitude reminds you of what God has done, and when you remember what He's done, you trust Him for what He's about to do. That trust creates expectation, and expectation opens the door for manifestation. A grateful heart creates the perfect atmosphere for God to release increase, favor, protection, and supernatural provision. Most importantly, Thanksgiving invites God's presence. And in God's presence, guidance becomes natural. He begins to nudge your steps, shift your thoughts, redirect your plans, and lead you away from what isn't for you. When gratitude is your first reaction, divine direction becomes your constant companion throughout the day. That's why Thanksgiving is not just a spiritual act, it's a spiritual environment. It sets the tone, it sets the pace, and it sets the atmosphere for God to move. Where there is gratitude, there is peace. Where there is peace, there is clarity. Where there is clarity, there is wisdom. And where there is wisdom, blessings flow freely. When you start your morning with Thanksgiving, you're not just preparing for the day. You're preparing the day to be blessed. As you step into this day, remember this one truth: everything begins with gratitude. Before the world speaks, before fear whispers, before your thoughts start running, let your spirit rise with a simple declaration: thank you, God. Because gratitude doesn't just start your morning, it shapes your entire day. It aligns your heart with heaven, unlocks doors effort could never open, breaks the hold of yesterday, and creates an atmosphere where blessings, wisdom, and divine guidance can flow freely. This is more than a habit. It's a spiritual strategy. It is how you anchor your peace, activate your favor, and invite God to step into every detail of your life. When gratitude leads, God follows with breakthrough. When thanksgiving rises, heaven responds with clarity. When a grateful heart speaks, divine help is released. So don't rush into your day. Don't let stress take the first seat. Lift your voice, lift your heart, lift your focus. Thank him for what he has done. Thank him for what he is doing, and thank him for the blessings he has already prepared ahead of you. When you begin with gratitude, you walk in strength. When you begin with gratitude, you walk in peace. When you begin with gratitude, you walk in divine favor. Start your morning by saying, thank you, God, and watch how God transforms everything that follows.